The hot spring trip was suggested by my husband, and it was supposed to be a delightful time just for the two of us. However, my husband brought along our son and his wife, with whom I have a strained relationship. And he did so without even telling me. And upon arriving at the hotel at our destination, my son's wife bluntly said to me, "If you dislike being with Mike and me so much, why don't you sleep in the parking lot or somewhere around there?" Her words, mocking me along with my son, and my husband's failure to intervene, brought me to my breaking point. "Fine. Do as you please. I'll be sleeping outside then, bye." With that, I spat out and got into the rental car parked in the hotel parking lot, heading out for a night stroll to clear my mind. As I enjoyed wandering the streets until dawn, I heard the sirens of ambulances and fire engines. When I turned my phone back on, which I had previously turned off, I found an incredible number of missed calls from my husband and son. "What the hell are you doing? How many times do you think we called and texted you?" When I answered the call, my husband and son were begging, saying their careless smoking had caused a fire scare at the hotel. I was utterly appalled by my husband and son, who did not even show a hint of apology at this point. So, I gave my husband one last chance and asked him, "Hey, which is more important to you, Mike and his wife or me?" "What? What's with that all of a sudden? Is this the time to be asking that? Just come back already." "I see, that's fine. Well, Mike is your child with that woman anyway, and it seems like I'm no longer in your eyes." Hearing these words, my husband and son were perplexed on the other end of the phone, and that's when I decided to spill a secret. A hidden secret between my husband and son that we had been carrying within our marriage. My name is Elizabeth, 46 years old. This year marks the 20th anniversary of my marriage to James, and we both work for a hobby manufacturer company. With James in sales and me in accounting, just as we have been since our marriage. And between us, we were blessed with a son, Mike, who has become a delightful part of our lives by marrying Jennifer, a girl he met in the same university. To outsiders, we might appear as a normal, happy family, but in reality, we are facing a certain issue. One day, as I was preparing dinner after returning home, I noticed James researching something on the computer. "James, what are you looking up?" Curious, I peered over, and to my surprise, James was on a travel agency's website. Beautiful resorts and hot springs were displayed on the screen, and I couldn't help but lean in closer with excitement. To which James turned to me and said, "Actually, I've been thinking about planning a trip soon." "A trip? That sounds wonderful." I couldn't contain my excitement and raised my voice. "See, we've both been busy working and haven't had much chance for this kind of thing. Don't you think it's about time we let loose a bit?" "Yes, I've been feeling the same way. Fortunately, outside of our busy seasons, we both have flexible schedules that allow for time off." Just thinking about the trip made me giddy with excitement, something that hadn't happened in years. Though James initially helped with household chores after our marriage, he eventually stopped, citing work as the reason, leaving me to handle most of it. This trip, suggested by James himself, was a much-needed break from the accumulated fatigue and stress. More than anything, I was happy that my husband, who usually only showed interest in his work and rarely conversed with me, suggested we go on a trip together. The trip is a great idea, but there's something I've been hesitant to talk to you about. Hesitant about what? What is it? You know what I'm talking about. It's about Mike and Jennifer. Hearing our son and daughter-in-law's names made my expression darken. Indeed, since advancing to junior high, Mike had grown distant and cold towards me, his mother. Ignoring my attempts to talk, he would lock himself in his room or go out, and on the rare occasions he did respond, it was with a dismissive, "It's nothing," or "Leave me alone." At times, he was outright rude, demanding, "Hurry up with the food," or "Give me some pocket money." And there were instances when I was locked out of the house, not just by the door but by a chained gate. Initially, I dismissed it as a phase of rebellion, but when his harsh words and actions persisted, I grew concerned and consulted James several times. However, James brushed it off, saying, "Isn't that just a phase of rebellion or maybe just adolescence? You should understand that and deal with him properly as a mother," showing little concern for the matter. I tried to reach out to Mike, but his attitude remained unchanged. After advancing to high school, he moved into a dormitory, lived in one during university as well, and hardly ever returned home. Even after marrying Jennifer, I wasn't invited to their wedding, and my letters of congratulations went unanswered. When Mike brought his wife Jennifer home, I immediately sensed a mismatch. Her brightly dyed hair, heavy makeup, and flamboyant attire made her appear like a gal, even at her age. In front of James and Mike, Jennifer behaved normally, but the moment we were alone, she stared at me, then glared, and said, "I wondered what kind of woman the mother of Mike would be, only to find out she's this plain. No wonder Mike detests you." From her derogatory words and expression, I thought she was indeed a perfect match for Mike. Interestingly, they didn't have any children and seemed to live a carefree life. Despite their apparent dislike for me, similar to Mike's, they began to frequent our house from the day of their introduction, often with Mike. When they visited, Mike and Jennifer would usually lounge around, hurling insults at me and even staying for dinner. I was left to prepare and clean up the meals alone, and they would arrogantly demand that I bring them more drinks and snacks, leaving me no peace. I rarely joined their conversations, but Jennifer once condescendingly said to me, "Elizabeth, why do you even work after getting married? Spending hours surrounded by old men making toys, I couldn't do that." Jennifer, being supported by Mike, doesn't work herself, and given her habit of skipping work, it's unlikely she would last long in any job. Hearing her gleefully talk about skipping past jobs, I sighed inwardly. Unable to tolerate Mike and Jennifer's selfish and tyrannical behavior any longer, I once again sought advice from James, only to be told, "Mike is still as rebellious as ever, but Jennifer isn't that bad, right?" But I'm being treated like a maid by Jennifer, feeling miserable. I have my job too, and my body can't take this anymore. Even so, what can I do? "This is troublesome," he would say, trying to play dumb and brush it off. However, at some point, the visits from Mike and Jennifer ceased. Whether they no longer wanted to see me or had other obligations such as work or finances, the reason was unclear. But their absence from our home was certain. Yet, it seemed James was still meeting with Mike and Jennifer. I could sometimes smell their perfume and cigarette smoke on James when he returned home. Being asthmatic, cigarette smoke could be deadly for me. So I had asked Mike and Jennifer to refrain from smoking inside the house when they visited. Regardless of my strained relationship with Mike, feeling at peace for not having to meet them was a relief. Above all, I was done dealing with their unbearable behavior. That's why I made an effort to convince James to ensure that Mike and Jennifer wouldn't interfere. Relieved that James agreed, the destination for our hot spring trip was set to Hawaii. I looked through the guidebook daily, bought new clothes, and eagerly awaited the trip. But the intrusion on the trip was completely unexpected. On the first day of the hot spring trip, we arrived at the security check for the Hawaii-bound plane, pulling our suitcases. Just as we were about to pass through the ticket gates with our boarding passes, there you are, both of you. Elizabeth, long time no see. Turning around to the familiar voices, I was shocked to see Mike and Jennifer standing there. "What? Why are you here? Didn't Dad tell you?" "We decided to come along to Hawaii." Hearing this, I was dumbfounded, then glared at James. "Mike and Jennifer have always dreamed of going to Hawaii. I'll handle them, so please, let's go together." I was astounded. Knowing I was still being treated poorly, he still chose to prioritize Mike and Jennifer. All my efforts, including work and dieting for this day, were ruined. I decided to leave. There was no point in going to Hawaii with such unpleasant feelings. As I was about to turn back, Mike and Jennifer stopped me. "For the past 11 years, I've wanted to reconcile with you, Mom. But I couldn't bring myself to be honest about it. And ended up behaving that way. I also realized my attitude wasn't right. I wanted to get along with you, Elizabeth. But I kept acting that way and felt awkward coming to your house. You understand, right? We don't want to strain the parent-child relationship any further." I was taken aback. It was the first time Mike had been so humble, let alone Jennifer. Not wanting to be seen as the villain, I reluctantly agreed to go to Hawaii with the four of us. Mike and Jennifer were in high spirits on the plane, ordering and starting to drink alcohol. James was also smiling happily next to me. Meanwhile, I felt an odd sense of unease but tried to distract myself by looking at the scenery outside the window. Upon arriving in Hawaii and renting a car, we started our trip based on the plan James revised on the plane. However, soon after, Mike and Jennifer began to ignore my presence and only spoke to James. At water-based attractions like the Sea Life Park and Waikiki Beach, they tried to trip me, making me fall and get soaked, and at lunch, they would push their leftovers onto me, among other forms of harassment. Feeling the tension, after dinner at the hotel we arrived at, Mike and Jennifer came to our room, wanting to drink alcohol. When James went to the store downstairs to get some snacks, Mike and Jennifer, who had bought alcohol in Hawaii, sat on my bed without asking. Then, Mike took out an ashtray and cigarettes from his pocket. "Hey. This is a non-smoking room. Stop it, please." "What?" "It's fine if we ventilate," Mike said with an annoyed look, and Jennifer also started to take out a cigarette to smoke. I reached my limit and found myself shouting, "Enough. Stop smoking in a non-smoking room. You'll get us thrown out if you don't follow the hotel's rules. What's with you all of a sudden? I told you before that I have asthma and can't handle cigarette smoke. And please follow the hotel's rules." Annoying. Your serious, motherly attitude has always been so irritating. Smoking blatantly in a non-smoking room is the height of rudeness. God, you're so annoying. What's wrong with having fun on a trip? If you hate smoke so much, why don't you sleep in the parking lot or somewhere? As my head went blank from their words, James returned from his errand. "Hey, it's loud even in the hallway. What's with the shouting? I can't stand being with these two for another second." "Elizabeth, what happened? They're trying to smoke in a non-smoking room. And why did you bring them along despite me saying no? This is unbelievable." My pent-up emotions overflowed with tears. Mike and Jennifer looked down at me with a sneering laugh. "You're just annoying, acting all high and mighty. You're no fun, not even drinking a single sip of alcohol." At Mike's words, I felt something snap inside me. Fine, I get it. I'd rather sleep outside than stay here. Bye. Hey, Elizabeth. I quickly gathered my valuables and phone and left the room. James tried to stop me by grabbing my arm, but I shook him off. "Leave me alone. I want to be alone." I hurried out of the hotel and headed to the parking lot. There was no sign of James following me. I got into the parked rental car and drove around Hawaii at night to clear my head. Despite my suspicions, Mike and Jennifer hadn't changed their attitude towards me. And James was no better. Despite my desperate pleas, he brought Mike and Jennifer along without my consent. It seemed impossible to continue the family relationship with them after the trip, especially considering the secret about James and Mike that I had kept as a wife and mother. The more I thought about it, the more anger and sadness overwhelmed me, so I kept driving to calm myself down. As I drove through Hawaii's beautiful night scenery, my heated mind finally cooled down. After driving for a while, tiredness set in, so I parked the rental car in a coastal park and decided to rest inside. I thought I heard sirens somewhere, but I was too exhausted to care and quickly fell asleep. When I woke up, dawn had broken, and the sparkling sea greeted me with its beauty. While soothed by the sea view, I had breakfast at a seaside diner, then remembered to check my phone. I had turned it off before the drive because I didn't want to hear from James and didn't even want to see his texts. Now calm, I turned on my phone, curious about what James and the others were doing. Then, I noticed an incredible number of missed calls and texts starting from around 11 o'clock last night. There were at least 30 or 40 of them. Right after being surprised by this, a call from James came in. "What the hell are you doing? Do you know how many times I've called and texted you?" James's voice was half angry, half crying. "What do you mean? I just had breakfast at a seaside diner." "What? While we're in deep trouble, you're casually having breakfast?" Mike's voice was also heard next to James, sounding irritated. "What trouble are you talking about? It's exactly as it sounds. After you left, the three of us had a little party with cigarettes, alcohol, and snacks, and before we knew it, we fell asleep. And when we woke up, the room was filled with smoke." "What? A fire?" "Yes. It seems the cause was Mike and Jennifer's cigarettes not being fully extinguished. And everyone was okay? Somehow it was just a small fire, but fire trucks came in droves, and everyone in the hotel had to evacuate. And now we're being blamed for causing it." Jennifer got a slight burn and was taken to the hospital. And now, Mike and I have to go to the police for questioning and apologize to the hotel staff. I see. The sirens last night must have been for that. And to think their carelessness caused such a commotion. I was beyond words. Then James, in his carefree and irresponsible manner, said, "So, we're tied up here and can't leave. Can you go to the hospital and stay with Jennifer?" What? The lack of an apology and prioritizing Jennifer over me. I guess some things will never change. That's why I gave James one last chance by asking, "James, who's more important to you, me or Mike and Jennifer?" What? Why are you asking that now? This isn't the time. I see. Well, by then. I was completely disillusioned by James squandering this last chance. Hey, what do you mean? Don't joke around at a time like this. Well, Mike is your child with that woman, and it seems I'm no longer in your thoughts. What? That woman's child? What are you talking about? Both James and Mike were perplexed by my words. I took a deep breath and decided to reveal the secret I had kept hidden. Mike, you are the child of your father and his mistress. Mike was dumbstruck by my words, and James became even more flustered as I began to tell the secret. 24 years ago, James had an affair with a woman other than me. She was a subordinate at our workplace at the time. By the time I found out, the mistress was already pregnant. She arrogantly told me, "I'll give you the child, so don't demand any compensation." I thought she was the lowest of the low, but I was also torn. It seemed cruel to have the child only to abandon it in some institution. So, I decided to take in the child as mine and James's, without demanding any compensation from the mistress, who was then fired due to the scandal. James's affair also came to light, but taking the child as his own softened the blow. Even though we weren't blood related, I decided to raise the child as my own. Despite this decision, Mike's rebellious phase began when he entered middle school. I initially thought it was normal childhood behavior, but it continued into high school and university, getting worse over the years. Realizing that Mike was indeed the child of James and his mistress, I was bound by the affection I had developed for him over the years. Unable to cut ties. After explaining this, Mike, confused and shouting over the phone, said, "That can't be. I can't just be some bastard child. I have proof of your father's affair if you want to see it. I keep it with me all the time, thinking James might dispose of it if left at home." Lies. So, you're saying you're not my real mother? That's what I've been trying to tell you. I tried to be a real mother, but I can't anymore. It's clear we don't get along because you have that woman's blood. After my words, Mike seemed to have run out of things to say, falling silent. Realizing the gravity of the situation, James raised his voice at me. "Hey. What are you saying? You promised you wouldn't tell Mike. I don't care about that. Just be grateful for the 24 years I've put up with this. That's all." After that, James continued to rant over the phone, but naturally, I didn't entertain him and promptly hung up, blocking both him and Mike. Then, without visiting the hotel or the hospital, I enjoyed the Hawaii trip on my own and returned to New York before James and the others. Afterward, I packed my belongings, moved back to my parents' house, prepared the divorce papers, and sent them to James. Later, a colleague from work told me the aftermath of their hot spring trip. They were severely reprimanded by the police for their negligence with fire, and on top of that, the hotel demanded a hefty compensation for causing a commotion by smoking in a non-smoking room. James, Mike, and Jennifer had to somehow come up with the money. With the help of a lawyer hired by my parents, my divorce from James was successfully finalized. The divorce quickly became the talk of the office, and James's work performance declined until he eventually resigned quietly. I heard he struggled to find another job, ended up borrowing money from various acquaintances, and finally declared bankruptcy. Mike's income and mental state became unstable after the incident, leading to daily arguments with Jennifer due to the stress of their difficult life. As for me, I became completely enchanted by the charm of the hot springs during my solo trip and now go several times a year with my parents and friends. My work is going well, and my performance has been recognized, leading to my promotion to the head of the accounting department.